Yeah, and you have a ton of episodes. I saw you've been doing the podcast for a while now, haven't you? You guys are at like
Yeah,
past 100 episodes. That's crazy, man. That's a lot.
yeah, we've been recording for like over 2 years. So we do an episode a week.
That's awesome.
Coming at you all the way from Arbitrum, it's the Magic Hour Podcast.
This is Alan.
Dionysus.
And Breaker. Produced by Digital Strategies Guild. Before we get into news and notes today, I want to mention that we have Noah, how do you pronounce your last name?
Noah Bragg.
Noah Bragg from CityClash, a project on Arbitrum that has recently been announced as a Trove partner. Do I have that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys. I've listened to all the episodes and really enjoy your guys' bantering around and talking about treasure ecosystem stuff. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you here, and thank you for the kind words. I think it's really, rewarding for us to hear that people in the ecosystem are listening to the pod, and you also have a podcast. So I think that, I really want to listen to your episodes now too, and learn more about what you guys are talking about. But we'll get into that a little later. Right now, we want to go through some news and notes in the ecosystem. Alan, I know that you were talking about some small brains news. Can you care to share with us?
Yeah, definitely. So for, our regular listeners, there was an AMA that was held on just yesterday, as far as I believe, on Twitter. And I think Corel was there, John, just a regular small team. And they definitely wanted to convey a few messages to the small brain community. And I mean, there is a recording, and we can definitely post that link below for the AMA. But for one of the things that I did see, which was posted on the Discord from John himself, that branding will be unveiled on Friday. And then after that, they're going to be moving into backpacks, and then breeding, and then magic emissions. There hasn't been given a specific timeline of everything else and when those things are going to be coming, but the only thing that has been timelined as of right now is the branding itself. So we haven't been gotten any information past that. All we know is that branding is going to be unveiled this coming Friday.
Branding is good, but I feel like backpacks were announced back in January, and right? Am I right?
No, definitely. And that's, I feel like a lot of people were talking about just the timelines and just organization and stuff like that. That I guess has been like a big thing that Treasure and just the whole Small Brains team has, I guess, been kind of working on for the last little bit. And I think the community is really wanted to emphasize that as well. And John did posting a big message in the Discord as well, that he was kind of stating that this is something that the team is definitely aware of. And they have been, of course, the things in the past cannot be like forgiven or underlooked, and they're just taking accountability now for hitting timelines, and they want to make sure that they're using this time as a reset, and definitely making sure moving forward that they're committed to the project and doing the things that are said. And I mean, we have heard these things being said multiple times before in the community. Let's just hope that this time they're going to be true. So, but I mean, I guess this is a good message that I guess that was needed for the community to see, and it is a good accountability, and I'm glad that they are taking credit for, well, not necessarily credit, but they are taking respect to everything that has been going on.
Yeah, and I think kind of from that same perspective that like branding is generally like a larger strategic exercise and also like a very visible like step back away from some of the more executional things like backpacks or other milestones that the team did lay out with a timeline that has come and gone. But I think that overall it is showing that the team is kind of taking a more strategic and kind of like organized approach to how they're going to structure smalls and just treasure a little bit more moving forward. So I think it's a good indication that there are more positive things to come. But I also think that sometimes living through that rebranding and things like that, it feels like not a whole lot is happening when those are really the foundational steps you need to kind of create a cohesive ecosystem moving forward.
Definitely. You're 100% right about that as well. And I mean, John did say that they do have about 40 people working on the treasure staff now, and to execute smalls and treasures as well. And I guess the whole concept of them, as I said a couple months back, of not overestimating and not over deliver, like not over counting for the things that they're doing. Guess that's something that they're really taking into consideration now as well. And let's just hope that they just over deliver when they do decide to execute the things that they're giving out.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I was at that ANA, and it was really interesting because I think some people went into it kind of expecting like some big announcement, a new thing, because people have kind of been waiting for a while, and there wasn't really much of that. I feel like their kind of goal was kind of saying, okay, we're doing this branding thing, like you said, Alan, and then it was kind of more just like trying to bring the vibes back, just like getting the community together, get people chatting, get like some feedback. And I think that's one of the things they talked about, that, we need to start doing more as a community, which I think that's really true. And just kind of bringing back the community together to interact together, have events and things like that. And I think that will definitely help kind of strengthen the community as well. But yeah, I can feel that, there's people that are, maybe tired of being patient, whatever. I think they were also trying to kind of push back on that, like that, we kind of just have to be patient. Like they kind of talked about how really they've been pulled really thin and stretched, like the team has been stretched. Like I can imagine that some of the people on their team have been kind of doing double duty, like doing stuff for other treasure projects and treasure as a whole. And it sounds like they just haven't had as much time to kind of focus on some of these small brain initiatives as much. And where now, like hopefully they have people that are in place. Like they said that they have 12 people on the smalls team. And a lot of those just came in the last like month. So hopefully like going forward, there's like dedicated people that really can push the project forward.
100%. And just one thing I really wanted to quote on John that he said within the Discord message, because one of the community members asked the question that was regarding to the statement that he made about scaling and just taking accountability for everything that's said. John said, "You can all be working and still don't know how to connect the pieces in a new organization structure." He says, "All the pieces are there. Now we are connecting them." And honestly, I really like that he said that, and it did give me also a good insight, I guess you could say, on I guess what's to come. They have a new team. They have a bigger staff. Stuff is going to be dividing more accordingly. It's going to be more organized, well structured, as they say. So again, let's just hope that they can execute. That's just the biggest thing now, and executing at the right time as well.
Noah, do you think that they successfully restored some of that invigoration in the community? Like, were the vibes good in the spaces?
So I think so. I think one of the things that they're doing, that they talked about that they're doing, and I've heard from some of the OGs that they're doing, is they're like having weekly like calls with the OGs, and really getting feedback from the community. And I think that's away from like the small coin and going back to the magic and some of those initial roadmap ideas that you guys are talking about. For me, like I kind of got into treasure in January and kind of got into the small brains and stuff more recently. So I kind of missed some of that first kind of ride up that you guys were probably a part of. And so it is kind of interesting to come in kind of as, kind of fresh meat, new blood. Like to me, like looking what I'm seeing now, like there definitely seems like there's an amazing team here. I love the leadership of John and stuff. And I think there's a ton of potential that they have, and so coming in, like from my standpoint, like I think there's a huge opportunity that they have. And that's actually something they talked about too, like being in the bear market, like they have an opportunity in front of them. And so I'm optimistic that they can run with that. So, but yeah, hopefully that kind of answers some of those vibes kind of questions, at least that I had from my side. I'm sure some people that have been a part of it longer, could be looking down on it because they kind of went on a ride all the way up and then back down. So I can see how, you could have that kind of opinion as well.
Yeah, round trippers will always be salty. That's okay.
Well, no, I really appreciate the refreshing viewpoint that a newcomer like yourself brought. I think that your observation that this is a vibrant community and there's a lot being built and been built already is probably lost on a lot of us who've been here for a while. So I really appreciate that insight.
Definitely. One last thing I also had to say is, for me personally, I feel like the biggest thing that Treasure and specifically Small speaking need to bring back is the trust. The trust that the community once had, the trust that they ended up building, and they ended up being built, and it was a lot, trust me. And that was, again, I always said in all the episodes, the biggest thing that I love about Treasure is the community. And one thing about the community that they had was just the trust that they gave towards the team, towards the building process, and towards just the infrastructure that that was being placed. And that's a really big thing that I feel like Treasure and the small team, specifically speaking, is probably focusing on now as well, and that they should definitely focus on, because bringing back that community, bringing on a new community onwards as well, is making sure to regain that trust and also build new trust for new people coming on. Is going to be a very important thing that I feel they should definitely work on. And I mean, with these statements that they're saying, and definitely the stuff that they're going by, and just how they're planning on things, I feel like honestly they should be fine in bringing it back. Because necessarily, I don't think anyone really hates Treasure. I just feel like people have lost the trust that they had from before.
Well, yeah, there's definitely been a lot of hype and not a lot of, what is the phrase? Too much sizzle, not enough steak, right?
Yes.
But, we'll see what happens. Alan, I just wanted to know, do you have any updates on small potions for us? You mentioned you were in a meeting tonight. Anything that you can share, or, like some
So
exciting news?
we are getting close. I won't say anything just yet. But in the Discord, we have revealed some of our artwork and some of the stuff that's going to be out. I personally love it a lot. Love it a lot. Definitely for the people who are listening, join the Discord. We can post a link for that as well. Give us some insights on what you guys think about the artwork, if you think it's cool or not. And but things are coming soon. I could definitely say that. And I'm excited for it, and I think everyone else is going to be excited for some of the announcements that we're going to be making very soon as well. So I just say, just hold on to your horses just for a little bit longer, and it'll be worth it, definitely.
All right. Dion, did you have anything this week?
For news and notes, I just have general hype and what's to come for Battlefly.
Okay.
They had an announcement in the last week essentially saying that they too have been scaling. They have about a dozen people that are generally working about full time.
Mm-hmm.
And in Q2, they have, I think most importantly, just two things to come. They're going to have their 3D racer, which you will need a Battlefly to play this. So now might be a good time to accumulate. And the second thing is their main game. So we can all look forward to that by the end of Q2, which I am quite excited for.
Me too. I have 4 Battleflies. I'm thinking about buying more now.
Nice.
Before we get into the Noah and CityClash, I just wanted to touch on my treasure bag update. It's not good.
Oh,
Spoiler
no.
alert. So as some of you might know, I probably about maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, I bought a treasure bag with an unbreakable pocket watch in it. At the time, I think I paid 0.15 ETH. The floor on treasures on OpenSea right now, treasure bags on OpenSea, is actually 0.04. So if you were thinking about picking up a treasure bag, now's a good time. And then, but again, we don't even know if they can migrate yet. And the floor on unbreakable pocket watches is currently 0.03 ETH. So I'm down bad, as they say, which is to be expected, with everything that's going on in the markets. But I figured that would be a fun little update to have right now.
I don't know about fun, man.
Listen, it was a risk-taking adventure, like
It's an
it's one
update
little
that's
bag.
needed, but it's a bitter pill to swallow at the same time.
But enough about that. Let's talk about the real star of the show right now. Noah, welcome to the pod. I personally poured over the CityClash white paper. We'll get into, excuse me, I should say light paper. We'll get into it in a minute, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I think I want to start with the fact that you have your own podcast. When and how did you start your podcast? Tell us how that came about, because I think that predates your interest in Web3. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I'm a builder. I've been into entrepreneurial kind of stuff for a while, probably the last 5 years or so. I went to school for software development. And so I'm a software developer. I've worked at multiple different companies, started a couple businesses on the side. But that's really where the podcast came in, was having a way to kind of share the journey of building a business. Just kind of being transparent about it and open with it. And my co-host, he also owns a business. And so that's basically what our pod is just us kind of talking about the decisions we're making week to week in our businesses, the progress we're making, and stuff like that. And so it's kind of about building businesses. The kind of businesses I'm into are kind of this term that's kind of come up in the last year or two called like indie hacker businesses. Not sure if you guys have heard of that, but it's kind of this idea that you're making a small online business where it doesn't have to be like a big startup that blows up to be like a huge thing. It's just, it's just trying to make an online business that at least works for you and your family. Maybe you grow it to a small team. It's kind of similar to kind of like bootstrapping. Like you're trying to build a business without having to take a ton of capital in and kind of go like the venture capital route and stuff like that. And so I've built a couple of businesses that are kind of like that and sold 2 businesses. And then a year and a half ago, I started a SaaS called Potion. And it's a website builder that's built on top of Notion. If you're familiar with that, it's kind of like this note-taking app. And so that's kind of my business right now that I still am running. And then kind of dove into the Web3 stuff around nine months ago. So that's kind of a little bit of the background and the podcast.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't realize you had built a couple of companies. It's really great. I'm going to definitely check out the Potion app too. Really interested to see what you built there. But how did you discover Web3 and what caused you to kind of get more involved in it?
Yeah, so I started getting into crypto in 2020, right after kind of like COVID started. So I think there was kind of like a down there with COVID. And then that's when I got into crypto. And pretty early, like in that first like 6 months or so, I made some good money just with Bitcoin. And I think that's how it usually works for people is like you get into crypto and once you go like you make some money from it, you're like, what's going on here? Like, what is this stuff? I want to like actually know more about it because, you invest in it, but you don't really have a clear idea of what it is or how it works, the behind the scenes. And so then I started to dig more into how crypto works. But it wasn't really till the NFT boom of last summer that I was like really intrigued just to see like that people were doing more stuff with crypto and kind of NFTs, kind of opened up this kind of whole new world. And that's when I really kind of dove more into it and bought some different NFTs on layer 1, Ethereum, and started to like learn like how the technology actually works, like learning about the blockchain. Learning about Solidity and how like smart contracts are made. Because like I'm a software developer, but I never had actually looked into the technology behind it. And so I then just started like teaching myself Solidity, teaching like myself how Web3 works and diving into different smart contracts of popular projects that we're launching. And that was kind of the way I started learning about it. And so then I was talking with a buddy of mine who had kind of been in crypto and kind of had the same story of kind of getting a lot more interested with NFTs. And so we decided to start working on an NFT project. And so that's kind of the background story of kind of getting into crypto. And it's kind of that thing where it's like, once you go down the rabbit hole, it's really hard, hard to come out. Like you're just like, it's so intriguing and interesting. And you just kind of have to keep learning about it and keep exploring because there's so many new and exciting things happening. And so that's kind of why I've really enjoyed it is because I just really like learning and creating things. And so there's just a lot of that happening in crypto and NFTs, which makes it fun.
For sure. And as a developer, how do you find Solidity? Is it very intuitive? Is it difficult? What's your take? Or is it more one of those like unique languages that you just kind of have to learn?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty similar to JavaScript, which is used for a lot of Web 2, a lot of web applications and stuff like that, which I've been using for a while. And so from like a syntax standpoint, like it's pretty simple to kind of learn it. Really, where the kind of the differences are is like you're handling money, which is obviously kind of a big deal. Like you don't want to send money to the wrong people or mess something up there. And so just everything you do is in some ways more important. And so then like testing is kind of more important when it comes to Solidity. But really the main kind of learning curve, I think, is kind of just the limitations of the blockchain where, on Ethereum, you can only do so much. You can only have programs that are so big and you can only have so many transactions per second. And so there's just like a lot of limitations. It's almost like you're programming on a Raspberry Pi or like a terrible piece of hardware. So it almost feels like you're going back to the Ice Age a little bit with just how the blockchain works and Solidity and stuff like that. So there's a bit of learning that goes on there. But in other ways, it's actually pretty simple because everything has to be on the blockchain. So it's really just like logic and everything that's on the blockchain. You're not, calling out to tons of different like databases or web APIs that you kind of be doing in normal Web 2 applications. And so that's kind of also a limitation, but that just means that what you can do on Solidity is kind of simple. And once you kind of figure out those base things, you can kind of build on that. And so it's been a lot of fun to build in the Web3 kind of space there.
Awesome. Thank you for expanding on that. I'm going to turn it over to Dion. I think he's going to start the next couple questions.
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about limitations, because one thing I was curious about is why and how did you choose Arbitrum? And also, after that, Magic?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Because from the get-go with CityClash, we were looking to do a layer 1 project. Like, we were looking to build this for Ethereum. And really, like, it could have worked on layer 1, but we just saw that the opportunity of what we could build was just a lot larger if we went over to layer 2. And so that's kind of how we started to drift that way, as well as I found Treasure in January of this year and just like saw this community that was like, a pretty awesome community that was really into NFTs. I think by that point I was, I'd been around on layer 1 for a while, and I could just see a big difference where everyone on layer 1 at that point was like jumping from project to project. They didn't really care about the communities themselves. It was all just about kind of making the money and stuff. And so when I saw Treasure, I saw like a community that like really cared about this whole platform that Treasure DAO was building, and the projects that were coming out of it. And so that really stuck with me. As well as, Treasure DAO, a lot of the projects are GameFi kind of projects. And that was really where we were going with CityClash. And so that, that community kind of aspect that was already here at Treasure DAO, as well as just having smaller fees, played a really big part to be like, wow, we can actually make a game that could be a net positive for people to make transactions and make actions in our game, which would be really beneficial to make the game do well, where that wouldn't be the case on layer 1. So those gas fees and stuff was definitely like the big thing that made us be like, all right, we should come over to Arbitrum, come over to kind of Treasure DAO ecosystem. And so that's kind of why we made that switch.
Totally. I definitely think that you chose probably one of the best and most tight-knit communities in the NFT space, and definitely think you also chose right with Arbitrum.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. Another thing just to add there that's really great about Arbitrum from a developer standpoint is, we had already built out all of our smart contracts for Ethereum layer 1. And with Arbitrum, all those just port right over. Like everything's in Solidity. All the smart contracts are kind of developed the same way. And so that makes it really easy to just jump over to layer 2, where, if you're going to try to go over to like Solana or one of the other chains that might be faster, smaller fees, you'd have to basically recreate everything to work on those blockchains. And so that was another thing with Arbitrum that just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Arbitrum is pretty fast too. I mean, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. It's very comparable to Solana.
And honestly, just a question that I had as well is, speaking about L1 and, you guys transitioning towards L2, how do you personally think we can get more people to buy into the ecosystem, and not only that, but also transfer them? I mean, we could definitely. I mean, we're gonna obviously talk more in terms of a CityClash perspective as well later on into the episode. But just in terms of, how do you personally think we can get more people buying into the ecosystem, and personally even just transferring from L1 to L2?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and it's also a hard problem. But I think it's one of the problems that I've seen more and more projects that are launching on Treasure and Arbitrum are thinking about, because it's something that basically we've all seen like needs to happen. Like, there needs to be more people coming over to layer 2 so that the whole pie kind of grows and keeps growing. And I think the hard part about it is kind of like we're going back to what we were talking about at the beginning with small brains, is sometimes the answer to get new people into an ecosystem or into a project is different than what the people that are already there want. And I think that's kind of how, like, we heard John talk about, like, they've been focusing on like doing some rebranding and stuff like that. Like, that probably doesn't, like, all the people here don't really care about that too much. Like, it's all the new people that find small brains for the first time that's going to be beneficial to, and make a clearer story for them to understand and jump into this community. And obviously that's valuable to everybody, but it's harder for people that are already here to maybe see some of those things. So I think, some of the stuff that I think could help is just making that onboarding over to layer 2 easier. And I think Treasure has also talked about different ways of doing that, of having bridges and stuff that make it just easier to get layer 1 people over to layer 2. And so that's definitely part of it, is kind of that infrastructure. Things that we're doing that, that we can do on like our project basis level is just deeper integrations with layer 1. And so we have some connections with different layer 1 projects. Lazy Lines is one, Root Troop. And so we're trying to basically kind of bridge the gap with these layer 1 projects by incentivizing them to be a part of our project on layer 2, and kind of give them some extra benefits that would then incentivize them to come over and kind of check out what's going on with layer 2. And so that's kind of our approach to that within our project. But yeah, it's definitely a hard project, a hard problem. It will be interesting to see what happens over the coming year. I've heard a lot of people talk about, maybe what's next is like layer 2 season, where tons of people are coming over to layer 2 because of like, they're finally going to be tired of the expensive gas fees and all that stuff. And I think I think something like that could definitely happen, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that takes place. And so I think, for Treasure and all the projects that are involved on this ecosystem, just be kind of ready for that, and be ready for maybe an influx, I think, to be able to onboard those people easily and stuff. I think that would also put us in a good position to be able to grow quickly. But yeah, I'm also curious what ideas you guys have, or any pushback on that, or opinions on that problem.
Well, for one, I think you kind of were hinting at it, but with Arbitrum, and what makes it so good is you don't have to have a secondary token. You don't have to have the Solana or the Avalanche or the Matic to use Arbitrum. And I think, despite what everyone says about, oh, we need an Arbitrum token that's going to get people like interested in the blockchain, I think that's a selling point, that it doesn't have a token, because it makes it so much easier to interact on that blockchain. And it's not going to dilute Ethereum the way Avalanche and Polygon have, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think that is very true. Like, I like being able to have Ethereum on Arbitrum, and basically still getting to have that asset, which we probably all love, Ethereum. And so, yeah, I think that is a kind of a tricky issue, because if they do have their own coin, and like, how is that their own token? How's that going to interact with kind of the Ethereum that they already had here? And that definitely could change things.
Well, it's my understanding that, for one, because of I think it's ZK rollups is what Arbitrum uses. Is that right?
It uses optimistic.
It's
rollups.
optimistic, yeah.
Okay, optimistic rollups. But regardless, the rollups matter in terms of the verification, and which goes back to L1 anyways. And
right.
So the token would certainly be useless. It's not needed.
Well,
and then on top of that, when you interact with something on Polygon or Avalanche, you have to make sure that you have those tokens in a wallet on those chains before you even move anything else over there. Whereas here, you just send your Ethereum over there and everything works. I think that's like extremely huge. Now, ironically, we're talking about this, and Magic isn't Ethereum, and so you still have to bring your Ethereum over and then turn that into Magic if you want to get into the Magic ecosystem. So, it's still almost kind of the same thing, but at least it's not like 3 steps, it's 2 steps. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if I agree with you.
Okay.
Debate.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. The Arbitrum token wouldn't be used for transactions, right? We already used Ethereum. Totally agreed on that part. But alternatively, I think that a lot of tokens, what they do, and they do it unsuccessfully, is essentially tokens are a way to pay for users in the same way that tech companies operate at a loss for a very large amount of time before they ever turn a profit. Think Uber, right?
Mm-hmm.
And operating at a loss essentially allows you to pay for customers, generate volume. Hopefully at that point, you have other ways to either taper off your paying for customers through like insane APRs or APYs, or some other way that the volume offsets all the outflow of money from your like token and liquidity provisions, disseminating into the users that are kind of like coming in a mercenary capital type way. I believe, or at least I hope, that an Arbitrum token will come for at least that mania, but I do believe that the Arbitrum team has taken such a long time in, because originally they were against an Arbitrum token in the first place, and then they removed that language on their website, and so that has caused a slurry of kind of like hype and wondering about if it's going to happen. I feel like because they've been deliberate about the process, then they will be hopefully a success story of initiating a token and not having it just be essentially a big pump and dump, attracting mercenary capital and not having a realized plan to attract and keep users.
See, I don't like the idea of mercenary capital at all. I think that's like it's not in the spirit of what Web3 is to be, at least in my opinion.
Agreed. That's fair. I kind of view it as like a fact of all investing arenas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I totally agree. I think it can be managed in such a way that hopefully it attracts users and keeps them in such a way where it isn't kind of a failed token.
I also kind of touching on what Dion was saying in terms of it being like, a mercenary capital. And it's just the truth about just, the investing that goes into this. And I guess it's kind of the whole ethos of kind of what NFTs were kind of brought upon, in my opinion, to begin with. It's just the nature of it. It's just kind of how things were kind of started to be upon. And I mean, a lot of people do want a reset within the ecosystem. A lot of people wish that things weren't created the way they were to be for NFTs, and having digital assets or to be something that could be provided in a different way.
But we've gone off on a tangent here, guys. We're actually here to talk about CityClash, which, as we mentioned earlier, has recently been named a partner on the Trove marketplace. Noah, can you deliver your elevator pitch for CityClash and why we need to be excited about it?
Yeah, so CityClash is a play-to-earn game. It's a little different in that our NFTs are all cities. We took the 3,000 biggest cities in the world. These are real cities based on GDP and population data. And those cities are the NFTs that you'll each, that you would hold. But at the same time, there isn't like an extra like pawn or game piece in our game. It's the cities themselves, like those NFTs themselves, and how you buy and trade those cities. And the other kind of interesting part of our game is it's all based around factions, the red, green, and blue factions. And so these factions are basically fighting for countries. And I can explain more kind of how they're doing that. But it's all around like buying and holding these cities. And they're fighting for these countries so that they have the most points at the end of each week. And then we'll be rewarding people on the winning team each week. And so each week is kind of like a little battle where we'll take a snapshot at the end of each week and reward the winners. So that's kind of the game from a high level. It's all played on the real world map. We'll actually have our DApp will actually have the real world map, and it will kind of show, which countries are owned by which factions. It will show all the cities, and it'll kind of be like the game board where people can explore the different opportunities that are available in CityClash. And it's kind of interesting because it's kind of taking the game that we all kind of enjoy and play, which is NFTs, like buying and selling, trading NFTs, and it adds another layer on top of that. And you can kind of imagine how different cities would kind of change value and how much value they are based on how the game is going, and what would be more valuable to a faction to kind of pick up and sell and trade. And just kind of the social strategy that comes from that with these factions working together. So that's kind of a high level view. Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions from that, feel free.
Well, so if I own a city NFT, do I have a whole bunch of faction members invested in my city? And if I'm buying and trading, or if I'm trading that, do they get a portion of that NFT reward? I'm trying to understand how the factions play into the ownership of the NFT.
Yep. No, that's a good question. So I can clear that up. So each person individually will hold a city, that NFT. But what they're then fighting together for as a faction is the points in a country. Each country will have so many points, and those points will be the sum of all the cities in them. And so a city will have points based on population, GDP. So you can imagine like New York City is probably one of the most valuable cities you can have. Tokyo is another big one. So they're going to be worth more points than say the city, that's local to you that might be a small little town city. And so you'll hold those NFTs, and then whichever faction has the most points in that country will then win that country and get all the points for that country. And so you'll kind of be working with your team to basically buy up the cities that make sense for you to get the most points and win all the points in that country. And so then all those points then add up, which countries different factions have. And that will kind of determine the winning team just on the scoreboard. And so then if you're the winning team, what we'll do is we'll have a raffle that will take some different things into consideration, like, which NFTs you're holding. So like if you're holding some bigger cities, you'll get more entries into the raffle. And then we also want to incentivize people making strategic moves like transfers and transactions. And so you'll get more entries for actually making some different strategic plays throughout that week. And that will give you more entries. And then we're going to choose one person per week from the winning team to basically win a raffle. And I can explain more like where all that money and stuff is coming from. But that's kind of how we're incentivizing the teams to want to win and want to play actively in the game.
And just to clarify, you individually are not choosing the winner. It's going to be done by some, I assume, random number generation via like Chainlink or something like that, built on into the smart contract, correct?
Yep, right on. It'll all be on the blockchain using Chainlink. They have this cool technology called Keeper, where it's kind of like this function that runs whenever you want it to, but on a timetable. So like every week, basically, it will just automatically run that raffle, and that's on the blockchain.
And so another question too, in terms of the cities. So do the holders of the NFT get to choose which city they'd like, or is it just generated based on the 3,000 that there are?
Yeah. So from the beginning mint, it's going to be random. Which city you mint, you'll get a random city. But then after that, we have 3,000 cities, and we're still kind of figuring out how many we want to do in the beginning. But we're going to do kind of a pool of cities that will just start out the game mint from the beginning. And then every week after that, we'll release another country into the game, which will mint those cities from that country. But so you maybe know that you're minting a specific country, but you won't know which city you're specifically getting.
Makes sense. And I mean, as you brought up, like upon, like, for example, New York as being a city, again, with having one of the highest GDPs and stuff like that. And so from what I'm understanding is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, does that mean there are slighter advantages for depending on which city you end up getting based on the ones that there are?
Yeah, for sure. Like, so New York City will be worth around like 30 points, say, for example. And since it's a bigger city, has more population, it'll be worth more points than Seattle, which is my hometown. It might be only worth like 10 points. And so, you'd be holding a city that gives more points to your team, which gives you more chance of winning, the US. But also having a bigger city gives you more entries into that raffle. And so there's kind of incentives, for your team to hold a bigger city, but also individually for you, because you have more chances to win the raffle.
Cool. I get it now. Got it.
I just want to, before we move forward, because I want to talk about the Discord aspect to the game. But you mentioned that you're going to release like more cities after, say, a week or so. How will you manage that mint process where it doesn't become a gas war that we're all very, very familiar with? Yeah,
so we still are going to have whitelists. And so people that are on the whitelist will get, the first chance to be able to mint those cities. And then it will kind of open up to the public after that. So that's kind of the ideal way to kind of get around the gas wars, is having a period of time that people can mint out those new cities.
And that makes sense. Now, in reading your light paper, you talk about all these factions and them being in Discord and using Discord as a means to coordinate. Why did you choose Discord as the medium for this interaction with the game? And how does the, I guess, connection to the blockchain work in that regard?
Yeah. So, we kind of chose Discord mainly because that's where, that's what people are used to. That's where a lot of the crypto people are at. That's where they're doing their communication. And really, that's what it's going to serve for CityClash, is just being the channels in the place where factions are communicating, strategizing, and it is kind of a social strategy game. And so there'll be a different channels that you only have access to if you are on, say the red team. You only get access to the channels that the red team has, and that's where you'll strategize and kind of work together. And so Discord just made a lot of sense for those reasons. But as far as like with the blockchain, Discord will kind of, and that strategizing will all kind of be off chain, where it's, people are just strategizing however they choose. We're kind of leaving it open to the community, like however they want to work together. Like if they decide like we want to choose a dictator among us, like a leader that kind of makes a lot of our big decisions, you can do that. Or you can set up some kind of voting system. We would help do those kind of things. But really then it just comes down to people actually making their own individual moves in the game, buying and selling cities on the marketplace. And that's where it really goes down to actually being on the blockchain. As far as like the CityClash game, everything is like all the game mechanics are all on the blockchain, all of the scoring and everything like that. So it's all very decentralized. It's just, the strategy part that is not, that, is part of that is in Discord.
Okay, I think I understand. But, and this isn't necessarily to critique your game, but there can certainly be bad actors on each team, because whatever they might say in Discord isn't canon. It's not linked to the blockchain, so they could do something entirely different if they wanted to, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, there in some ways there's not ways around some of those things, where there could be people, trying to trick their team. And so that's definitely something people have to watch out for. What faction that people are on will be, that will be minted to the blockchain. But that doesn't go to say that there could be people that try to have like multiple wallets and try to get on multiple factions and stuff like that. So that's, it's, in some ways, that's just, people have to kind of take that into consideration as part of the game, that there could be people trying to backstab them and stuff like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how people kind of build trust with each other and work together to help make their team win.
And I really like that type of concept as well. As much as it's nice that, when you have a P2E game, that they just deliver the game for you and you just play it based on the rules that are given and just the formatting that has been structured for the game itself. I really do like the concept of just kind of making it almost like a free world building concept, to just you have the team given to you, you work with the team, you develop with the team, and you create the strategies and the implementations that you need within the game that are going to obviously help you gain the points to end up reaping the higher rewards that you can get. And I just really like how you guys are really just letting off the whole concept of shipping out the game and letting the whole just team really the teams that are playing the game just really decide on what they want to do and how they want to venture forward within the game, and just kind of just letting it be completely freeing on just based on the decisions that they make. And I mean, obviously there's other games as well, like path building and stuff like that, that the player base and the players who are playing the game get to decide on what they're doing, and that's the type of path that's given. But I feel like this is really structured, specifically indicating towards that the team gets to really decide on what they want to do and how they want to play the game. And, the options for them are kind of endless to some point, I guess I could say. And I just really like the concept of it. And, it's that double-edged sword of the, I guess the thing that Breaker was talking about earlier, is how there can be backstabbing, there can be multiple things that happen, but it's the trust that you have to develop, and it's the I guess the better team wins in the end. So that I really really like that. It's going to be really cool. I think that's really innovative, and I mean, we haven't seen something like this on Treasure just yet, so, or Trove specifically, sorry. And it's going to be cool. I'm excited for that.
Thanks, appreciate that.
You had mentioned that factions are assigned at the mint and that they will be on the blockchain. What happens if someone trades a city to a player on a different faction?
Yeah, good question. So we're actually in kind of a faction building phase right now. So we actually are having the factions be built out in Discord currently. It's not on the blockchain yet, but how that works is we have kind of a balancing bot that automatically adds people to the smallest faction by just size. But then people can use an invite link to invite people specifically to their faction. And so, they can invite their friends, they can invite people to try to build up their faction and make it stronger. But yeah, once the game actually goes out and we mint, then everyone will kind of be minted onto their faction, and that's kind of their faction for good.
So yeah, one thing that I definitely wanted to, I guess, discuss was in terms of just the problems and limitations that might be coming in within the game, and I guess you were just talking about the balancing that you guys want to add within the game as well. And I wanted to kind of ask if there's going to be any sort of comeback mechanic within the game that, for example, as you were saying earlier, that if a team is at the bottom, they have some sort of venture or some sort of motivation to keep them going within the game as well, and not just get frustrated and have that be an exit for the I guess the player bases within the game that are at the bottom.
Yeah, that's a good question. So from the start, we'll only have kind of the balancing of, as I mentioned, where any new people will be joining the losing team, and that will kind of balance things out from the start there. But we definitely see that there could be more need to have different balancing mechanics and more ways to kind of pull different levers to make the game fun and make it continue to be a challenge for the different teams and engaging. And so the cool thing that we've been able to do, and it's kind of been our goal from the start, is to have kind of this base game that we've been talking about live at launch. So right after you mint your cities and then reveal which cities you get, then the game will start right away. And so, that kind of gives a basis for us to then build on top of. And we can listen to feedback from the community, see what things they're liking, what's working, what's not. But then also can start to build more onto the game. A lot of projects, and this is kind of something we saw as in some ways a little bit of a problem, is that a lot of projects, especially on layer one, we saw this where they'd kind of launched their NFT and that was kind of all they had at that point. Other than that, they just had like this big roadmap of all these things that they were going to do. And so then they had to start working on those things, where in our case, we're kind of launching with everything to start. And then it's kind of at that point, we can just start listening to the feedback, listening to things that make sense. And then we can start building from there. And so a lot of the things that we'll be building can really go towards some of those balancing mechanics that you talked about, and making things continue to be fun. And how I've seen it, and none of this is like a solid plan or anything like that, but I could see this kind of going towards kind of the risk kind of game where you're like more fighting for the territories, or it could go more towards the city building kind of game where people can upgrade their cities and make them more valuable and help their team in those ways. And just the more that we build on with those kind of things, just gives us more levers to be able to pull where we can kind of balance the game so that people can continue to enjoy it.
You mentioned it earlier, CityClash Towers. I understand that it was recently minted, I think in April. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was just like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah. Tell us, how does that interact with CityClash itself? How do the two projects relate to one another?
Yeah, so CityClash Towers wasn't something from the beginning that we were planning on doing, but once we knew that we were partners with Trove, and then Trove got delayed, we kind of had this community and momentum that we were building up, and kind of just like free time at that point of like, okay, what do we do now as we're kind of waiting for the Trove launch? And so we came up with this idea of towers where, we could have another collection. This collection is free, and it's kind of a pre-collection to give value to our early community that would interact with the cities later. And so kind of how that works is the towers each started out as a 1-story tower, and the value of the towers is basically just how tall it is, how big the tower is, how many number of stories it has. And how you build your tower is by taking 2 towers and merging them together. And when you do that, it will burn one of the towers and then make the tower that's left be the sum of the stories together. And that's the number of stories that your new tower has. So for example, if you had a 2-story tower and a 1-story tower, you merge those together, burn one of the NFTs, and then you have a 3-story tower left. And so then how this interacts with CityClash is later, once we launch CityClash, this will be the first and only way that you can upgrade your city. You'll be able to burn a tower into your city and upgrade the number of points that the city has. And so the number of points that you're able to upgrade your city by will be relative to how tall your tower is. So if you had a tower that was, say 25 stories high, that's going to upgrade your city a lot more than if you only had a tower that was like 4 stories high. The max tower that you can create is 100 stories. And we've had a couple of people already build 100-story towers, which has been fun to watch. And it's kind of cool too, because all the images of the towers is all on the blockchain. And so it like dynamically changes to be a taller tower as you're merging them and stuff like that, which has been kind of cool. So it really kind of came out of this way to basically give value to our early community. It was also a way for us to kind of build some credibility. The city mint is not going to be a free mint. It's going to be a paid mint. And so this Towers collection was a way to build credibility with having a free mint. We're coming from Web 2, and so this is really our first collection that we've created. And so we wanted to show that we could execute on a Web 3 project. And so Towers was kind of our way to do that, as well as kind of add some extra strategic layers to CityClash, because people can, they can decide whenever they want to upgrade their city. And so they can strategically kind of hold on to their towers and find a way and a time that makes sense for them to upgrade one of their cities and help out their team and, potentially, take over some countries that way. So it kind of adds another layer as well.
Wow, that seems really, really cool. And just another question I also had, and I've honestly haven't asked any project that's on the podcast yet. And again, this isn't something that you have to answer if you're not comfortable with, but what were some of the biggest problems you faced while actually developing CityClash? I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about. And, something that's coming complex with this, and you guys being from Web 2 before and, entering this, again, just Arbitrum and everything like that. And this is, and to my perspective, it is really simplistic, but also adds that complex feature of, having the teams and just everything that could be developed upon it, and just the longevity of the project itself. What were some of the problems that you guys faced when trying to make sure that everything was balanced at an equilibrium?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's maybe 2 things I can speak to. I think the first would be, I'm a Web 2 developer. I've done a lot of like web applications, mobile apps, things like that. And so building like the first smart contracts, that was kind of a first for me like 7 months ago. And so just kind of that learning curve of learning how to deploy things onto the blockchain and stuff like that probably took a little bit longer than, someone that's had more experience with that. And definitely took a little bit longer than initially expected, just with that learning curve. So that was definitely one of the challenges, I guess, on the technical side. And then I think probably really one of the main challenges is really just building a community. And like, that's kind of the interesting thing with all of these NFT projects is a lot of them, you have to have that NFT, that community around your project, around your collection for it to go anywhere. Like, you can't just build the technical stuff and hope that it, just kind of works out. And so, yeah, just learning how to build a community. This is like, I haven't done a ton of that before either. And so that there's definitely a lot of challenges there. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I think, kind of one of the main ones. And just like understanding, we did a ton of learning and research just into other NFT projects to kind of understand, how do they work? How do these communities work? What incentivizes people? What brings them together? And how you can build a community around that. And so there was a lot of learning that we had to do just in that, and trying to understand how to build a community that actually has real value in it. And so that's I would say that that's not even like a done thing for us. Like, that's still a challenge and something that we're working on and building towards.
Awesome. No, that seems, honestly, I feel like that's something that every developer, every builder for a project has to face. And I feel like it's just part of the process of growing and just becoming a successful project. It's just going through these the tough times of getting the community, getting the entire interface, and just honestly getting everything to go, and then sustaining it throughout the time of the project being created and being played out as well. And I feel like that's just the beauty that comes with it at the same time. So yeah,
for sure.
it definitely makes sense.
I have a question, and I think it's more prevalent now than it might have been in the past, but is your team doxed? I think that this comes up a lot with L1 projects. I know it's been in discussion in a lot of the Discord channels that we hang out in. One of the members that in our Discord has even talked about potentially creating a rating system for projects. So, back to my original question, is your team doxed, and is that something you guys would do in the future to kind of guarantee that everything is on the up and up?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yep, we are all doxed, and you can go to our website, cityclash.io, and you can see like all of our faces. You can see a little bit of our background that we kind of share there. I'm probably as doxed as you can get. Before even getting into the Web3 space, kind of my big thing was building in public. All these kind of SaaS, kind of bootstrapper businesses that I mentioned, I've been building those in public over the last 2 or 3 years. And so like I would, post about my progress, how things were going. I would even kind of create little like update videos, which are all on my YouTube. I think I have, I don't know, 75 to 80 videos on YouTube of just like me sharing my progress building businesses. So, and then, yeah, the rest of the team is also doxed. And, for us, like that wasn't really something we cared about. I know that is kind of a crypto thing that people are in the crypto world are kind of getting into and being able to be doxed. But that just wasn't something that was kind of on the front of our minds that we cared about as much. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that.
Well, that's honestly refreshing. I'm glad to hear that, because I think that that's becoming more important to a lot of the users these days, especially when interacting with new projects and, wanting to feel comfortable investing in them. So I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to worry that I'm Do Kwon behind the scenes or something like that.
Hey, you're going to abscond with our money and create a new stable coin.
Yeah.
In doing my research again today, I noticed that CityClash Towers is being sold on a marketplace called Stratos. I had not heard of this one before. How did you come to, I guess, start working with them and get all your NFTs on there? Or is this something you built?
I did not build Stratos. Yeah, it was kind of a problem of, and this is definitely, I mean, I guess it's still a problem right now, is if you're not a treasure partner specifically where you can launch on the treasure marketplace, like where do you launch on Arbitrum? And, we talked to treasure team and like, at this time we already knew that we were a Trove partner. And so like our cities will be launching on Trove, on the Trove marketplace. But we really wanted to do our towers earlier on for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. And there's just really not a great marketplace on Arbitrum. And so Stratos actually reached out to us, and they're kind of a newer marketplace, and they just wanted to partner with us. And kind of part of that deal was that we'd be on like their front page and stuff like that. And so we just we looked at it, and we're like, okay, this seems actually like a pretty legit marketplace. I mean, I think really the only other option is Tofu, which maybe you guys seen a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we just decided to go with Stratos for our towers. But yeah, that's just for the towers. Everything else will be on Trove.
Okay. And will towers also be on Trove too?
Yeah, so not from the beginning. I know from the beginning, Trove they're kind of locking in specific collections. You kind of have to be whitelisted to be on Trove until maybe later they'll eventually open it up to anyone. And then at that point, we definitely have towers on there. But from the start, it will only be the cities on Trove.
We're nearing the end of the podcast. We've had a really great conversation with you, but is there anything that you want to share with the audience? Any final thoughts, Alpha, you might want to drop, or anything else you want that we didn't touch upon?
I mean, there's not a ton more about CityClash. I mean, I pretty much have dropped all the alpha. The kind of the funny thing is we haven't really launched our white paper yet, but we pretty much just talked through everything right there. Like that was pretty much everything that's going on in the white paper. So people listening to this will hopefully have a nice bit of alpha before the white paper comes out. But yeah, I guess the last thing to just say is appreciating what you guys are doing with this pod. I really enjoy how the community comes around the treasure ecosystem and just is learning about the different projects and is excited about the projects. And I think that is kind of a unique thing, as you guys were talking about. And is why I enjoy being a part of it and, getting more involved in the community and, ultimately why we decided we wanted to kind of build and be a part of this and make it grow and be more valuable. So yeah, thanks for what you guys are doing. And I enjoy listening to your guys' episodes.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. Dion, Alum, any final thoughts?
Honestly, I'm just really excited. I say this about all the projects that come on the podcast, but I mean, they all really do bring excitement towards me because they're also unique in their own ways. And again, one thing that I really loved about it is just the whole concept of how it's truly going to be just a free decision making game. And honestly, that makes me very happy, and honestly, very excited to see how it's going to play out. And that's going to be awesome as well. And again, thank you for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And again, for everyone who's listening, we'll post all the links for the YouTube, for the for the website, and everything else. That's all the information that we talked about today as well. And we'll make sure to post all those links down below.
Yeah. Thank you, Noah, and go Team Red. I think that's what team I'm.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I think I selected a team too. I remember when I joined. It might have been a while. Maybe I didn't select a team. Now I got
Well,
it.
guess I'm on blue. So guess we're going with the blue boys.
Yeah, that
You know
means
what?
you're green breaker.
I
I'm
am in
actually
green.
on.
I
Oh, you
am in
guys are
green.
on separate teams.
Oh, well, I guess we're all
Yeah.
going against each other. Better, better Magic Hour host wins. Let's see it.
Are you on a team, Noah? Are you participating, or are you just
I am actually on a team. I'm on the blue team.
Oh, okay.
Hey, let's go! Awesome. I
Yeah,
got
so
the
kinda how
admin
we
advantage.
Yeah, kind of how we split it up is my other co-founder Drew, he's on the red team, and then we have
Perfect.
some whales that we kind of specifically placed on the green team to kind of just like kind of seed the teams from the start, which is kind of fun.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm on the blue team.
That's awesome.
Well, good luck to everybody who's not on the green team. But honestly, no, this was a great time. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing CityClash launch on Trove whenever that may be. Hopefully soon. I think everybody's really excited about it, but I'm excited to play this game just like all the others. And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.